It was Monday night in October 1968. Off-duty NYPD Detective Randy Jurgensen was inside Arthur, a popular Manhattan nightclub, when he heard chaos outside, screaming, then gunfire. He ran into an alley and found a patrolman shot 4 times during a traffic stop. It was one of the most harrowing moments of his life, his career, that also included busting the French Connection drug ring, going undercover to investigate a string of murders targeting gay men in the 1960s, which inspired the Al Pacino film Cruising, and later leading the NYPD's investigation into the killing of Officer Phil Cardillo inside Harlem's Mosque No. 7, which he wrote about in his book called Circle of Six, the true story of New York's most notorious cop killer and the cop who risked everything to catch him. Randy Jurgensen joining us now on Heat NYC, Real Stories of Crime and Fire. Thank you so much for making time for us.
And thank you for having me.
I heard you grew up in Harlem and you used to know what was happening on your block, even when you were just a little kid. Who was running numbers? Who was doing this? Is that right?
Yes. I was raised during the Second World War, and I literally, like everybody else in my neighborhood, I was raised out on the street. I don't mean that I didn't have parents, but I was raised out on the streets, and all you had to do was just look around and observe, and you could see what was happening. Now I was raised in a neighborhood which at the time, it was far from a ghetto, but it was considered a poor neighborhood.
And you had, from an early age, a desire to serve, and for you it was the military at the time, and you tried to join before you were supposed to be able to join.
Well, when you're raised in the Second World War, and that's all it was. There were stamps. You couldn't get meat. You couldn't get pineapples. You heard it all. Sugar was rationed. There was all the Second World War. But that's really what it was about. These heroes, they were saving the world. Later on, Tom Brokaw would call it the greatest generation. Mm-hmm. And so when you're raised with that, you cannot wait, and I was not the only one. You can't wait to get in there. You can't wait to join. 12 years of age, I graduated from a Catholic school, Corpus Christi, and I graduated with George Carlin.
George Carlin, the comedian, the iconic comedian.
And George Carlin would go on to be George Carlin. Sure. We remained friends until the end. By then, I was collecting illegal numbers. There was also a running wire room of where people would go and they could bet on the horses, and they could bet on the horses, and now and then the wire room would change. So I would stand down at 125th Street and Amsterdam Avenue, and the people that were going to use the wire room would come to me. Where is it now? So forth and so on, and I would send them. At this time, Dan, I had a 30% disability from Korea. I lost some teeth, my ear, my leg, which required 3 operations after I came home.
3 Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart, by the way, in Korea. I overlooked that. I should mention that.
I went down and I found out that if I was to take that claim of that 30% disability, I couldn't work for the city. I see what
you're saying.
I never took my disability, and I joined the police department.
Eventually, you work your way onto the Undercover.
Yes, I was in narcotics and undercover,
and
I would do that for the better part of 16 or 17 months. In the meantime, that unit was working on a very high-level shipment of drugs that were coming in from France.
You're talking about the French Connection case.
Okay. One day in November, in a 5 floors up in Alphabet City, which is right off of Delancey Street.
Yep.
I go up and I make a buy, $75, and and now I'm coming back downstairs and I see sneakers in hands coming up, and I know I'm in trouble. They're coming up, taking steps two at a time. So I run back upstairs, and I remember that I'm coming back to this guy that I just bought the drugs off of. I'm being set up here. So I I jump over a couple of attached roofs. I jump over. I come down and I come out on Delancey Street. I've lost my backup by now. And
so are you saying you're jumping across the way they do it like in a movie? You're jumping across the roofs of these buildings here down in Alphabet City?
Yeah. So I jump across those roofs, maybe 3 or 4 of them, and I see them come up on the roof, and I get on the fire escape, and I go down the fire escape as quick as I can, and I go through the alleyway, and I come out, and I actually come out on Delancey Street. So I quickly go over and I go into the 7th precinct with the narcotics, which I'm going to turn in. And the sergeant's on the desk. I don't see any of the cops there. And I'm turning in the narcotics to him and I say, Sarge, what's going on? Where is everybody? And he says to me, I don't know where the you've been, but they just shot and killed the President of the United States.
Oh, my gosh.
So my world stopped. And so 2 or 3 weeks, we did nothing. I don't know who took care of the city. I then get a call from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. They say to me that there is a complaint, from the gay world. That's what they called it. Just know I'm talking 63 here, 1964, from the gay world. What is happening is they're being kidnapped. What is happening is they're being shook down for money. And what is happening is they suspect that it's cops. They suspect it's cops. Therefore, they did not go to the police department to report this, so they went to the district attorney's office. So I took the job. I took the job. Now, before I tell you what happened there, which would lead to the movie Cruising, before I tell you there, Sonny Grasso and Eddie Egan, in Narcotics, they make the bust. And it's called the Patsy Fuqua case. What did I have to do with that case? What I had to do with that case, when I was undercover narcotics, they would call me that I would have to sit on the wiretaps. They would call me, I'd have to sit on a building. They would call me, I would have to follow the Frenchmen that were going from here to there and stuff like that. That's what I did with that case.
That work is not glamorous. That type of work, sitting on a wire, you're hearing
Boring.
all kinds of stuff, following. That's not, all you hear about the glamorous side of it, the chasing down, the run. That's the kind of day-to-day stuff. I don't think a lot of people realize that. To sit in a building, it has a window that looks out on a car that the Frenchmen are going to use, and you're sitting there at 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock at night, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's almost like. I don't want to use God, but God forbid you close your eyes. They come down, take the car. So, it's very boring. But that boring work eventually brings you into the case. Brings you back into the case.
So the bus that they made, there's been bigger quantity, but never better quality. It was only 90% pure. Heroin, absolutely. So in the meantime, I'm now over living in an apartment working on the gay world. I'm working there. And so that bus got into the papers,
The French Connection.
Yes, that bus got it. That got in. It was called the Patsy Fuqua case. And so a writer by the name of Robin Moore, who wrote a book called The Green Berets, which John Wayne starred in, he got permission to come and hang out with the narcotic people. So in doing that, he wrote the book. Now it's called The French Connection.
Right.
He wrote the book called The French Connection. And shortly thereafter, 2, 3, 4 years later, Hollywood came calling to make the movie of The French Connection, which I was involved in from day one until it wins the Academy Awards.
And that movie, of course, starring Gene Hackman in the lead role. And essentially, it's the basis of the case is that a lot of the heroin that was being distributed and used in the United States was coming from these facilities in Marseille and France, and they were being shipped here.
It came from Marseille.
And this investigation was tracking that. These two officers for years, and these two officers, it was I don't want to say it at random because they were following these people, but it kind of happened almost not as a part of a, this is when we're going to go in and get these guys. It just kind of happened, right? They were pulling them over, and they shook them down, and they got them there.
If you stay with something long enough, even though they have the perfect plan, sooner or later they're going to make a misstep or do something somewhere along the lines. Yeah.
I want to ask you, what was it like to work with Gene Hackman on that movie set? I mean, essentially, you're playing yourself in some way, right?
That would be a lifelong, lasting friendship. I actually, while I was working, took them into the precinct with me to show how it went. We went out and we made real arrests. And Gene and Roy were with me, and Billy Freakin, they were with me. I did that for the better part of 3 weeks. That was all before pre-production. So Gene and I became very, very close.
Then you work with Al Pacino in the movie Cruising. What was that like?
I ingratiate myself into the gay world, and I never found.
Can we just take a pause on that? When you say ingratiate yourself, you're talking about going undercover.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I wanted to talk to you about. Because
4 or 5 months I lived undercover in the gay world.
How do you do that? How do you prepare yourself to say, okay, this is my life, but this is the life that I have to take on. This is the character I have to play in order to investigate these crimes. I mean, how do you do that as a person?
I was undercover so long that I honestly forgot I was a cop. I don't mean that I had to remind myself that I'm a cop, but when I'm in that world, whether it's undercover narcotics, undercover in the gay world, and you see policemen walking, and you see cops riding in radio cars, that's what I'm supposed to be doing, not what I'm doing. So there was a conflict there. There definitely was
internal conflict.
Huh?
An internal conflict.
It was.
Can you talk to me a little bit about what these crimes were? I mean, these were gay men in the 1960s who were being targeted. I mean, what was actually happening?
Gay men in the closet. I want who is looking at this, to forgive me. But gay men in the 60s, the term was the closet. I met gays who were working on Wall Street, were making more money than you could ever think of. But if they found out that they were gay, there was a chance they could lose the job.
Be over.
They could not join the police department, the fire department. They couldn't do anything like that. Not at that time. If you were gay, you could not. So that world to those people was very closed.
Got it.
And I was in there. Now I was firmly in there. However, there's a part of where they would meet, and it was over where they called the yards, and the yards was on the west side, and it was in truck, and they were in trucks in there. So they would go over to the trucks, and these people, the Salt and Pepper team, would catch them in a compromising situation.
Right.
Yank them out, pull them, take them in the car, and literally keep them overnight, and the next morning make them go to the bank and take money out of the bank. And there were 2 cases that I personally know of where he didn't have the money. He called his parents. And the parents went to the bank, took the money out, gave the money to the gay person, who then gave the money to the so-called cops.
Were they real cops?
No.
They were not real cops.
No.
Pretending to be cops.
Yes. And so that's the world that I went into. That's who I was trying to catch. But then the gays were not only being killed, I mean, they were finding them out on the river, parts on the out on the river. They were
You think that a serial killer for
No.
this, right? Do you think in your gut today it was a serial killer, or these were random crimes, maybe 1 or 2 connected?
No, I will tell you, it was not a serial killer. It was not a serial killer. I tend more to believe it was a group. One night, I'm heading down towards the yards, and here they come. Here they come, walking. And they were a distance away from me, but I turned and I followed them, and they got in a car. I ran to the precinct, and I believe it was the 5th precinct. I ran in there screaming. I was a cop. I told them what I was doing. I gave them the plate number, the parcel that I could remember, and they put it on the air right away. And cops in a radio car, being cops, saw the car, stopped the car, brought the people all into the precincts, and the detectives took over, made the arrest. Did we ever go as far as for the killings? The DA, absolutely not. Said no.
Interesting.
So that and out of all of that, one day on an aeroplane, coming back from Texas with Billy Freakin said to me, "Randy, I have optioned a book by Gerald Walker called Cruising, but I have optioned the book for the title only. You and I are going to get together, and you're going to tell me all about what you did." And we did, and he wrote Cruising, which I never saw. And then, we're going to make the movie. Jerry Weintraub is involved, and so they go for casting, and the first casting to play the captain is Frank Sinatra. And the person to portray me is Richard Gere. And that lasted for about 5 minutes, I don't know. And the next thing I know is that the studio, because I worked the budget with Billy, the studio picks up Al Pacino's salary, and I go to the set. And Billy says, Al is down in the camper. Go sit and talk to Al, who I knew from The Godfather. I was on The Godfather. In fact, in The Godfather, on the poster.
Were you one of Sonny's shooters in that one?
I did. I shot and killed Sonny Corleone.
How dare you?
Coppola said to me that after the shooting, 3 days out in Nassau, you're going to be the most hated man in America because there isn't a woman that isn't in love
with James Caan, yeah.
With James Caan, and you've killed them. Yeah.
And what was Pacino like?
Pacino, Pacino was like Gene Hackman. Pacino was like Scott Bakula. Any one of them that have played me on camera, anyone that have played me on camera, they're like sponges.
Moving away from Cruising and back to The French Connection, but after The French Connection either receives the awards or after it comes out, that's when there's the shooting at the Mosque up in Harlem. How did that part of the story go?
On April the 14th, President Lincoln was shot. On April the 14th, the Titanic went down. And on April the 14th, Patrolman Philip Cardillo was shot inside of Minister Louis Farrakhan's Mosque number 7.
That's the basis of your book, Circle of Six, which is available anywhere you want to buy books and
Yes.
Amazon.
That day is considered in the history of the New York City Police Department one of the darkest days of the New York City Police Department. And remember, the Cardillo case is happening right in the middle of 6 cops that were set up, shot, and killed. For 1 year, I am working on the killing of the police officers.
Separate case.
Separate case entirely. I'm working on that. A year later, after the killing, of which I was part of Twyman Myers, who was the #1 cop killer, wanted #1 by the FBI. And we chased him to Atlanta, St. Louis, Denver. I finally, not by myself, I finally caught up to Twyman Myers in the Bronx. And after a shootout in which Twyman Myers was killed, and I identified him, the next day after that, I am called to meet at one police plaza. Dan, I'm called to meet in the bathroom. And I meet in the bathroom, and he says to me, "You got the Cardillo case."
Why'd you have to meet in the bathroom? Because there were so many questions and corruption and things along the
You
lines of those
couldn't
cases?
mention the Cardillo case down in 1PP. On the day of April the 14th, later on it would show that the upper echelon of the New York City Police Department circled the wagons, but only they were firing in instead of firing out. The chief of detectives quit. The man who's in command quit. One of the most powerful people on the job, the DCPI, he quit. They all quit this case.
Because of what happened in this case.
Because of
so many questions.
Because of what didn't happen. I get the case a year later. And again, I'm never home. Again, it is day and night trying to put it together. And I will say this right now. It would not have been put together if it was not for people like Joe Pistone, who's Donnie Brasco, and I'll call the others by name, Al, Bob, and John. And totally off the record, off the charts, off whatever you want to call it, we would have clandestine meetings in the Hotel St. George, and the information that I needed to identify, to put this case together, came from them. And so after I put it together, I got lucky. I came up with an eyewitness.
Yep.
And that eyewitness was a young Muslim, reader of the Quran, almost innocent, if you will. And we would say, and he would say in the grand jury, and he would say at the trial, the minister has said to tell the truth, and that's what I'm doing. I'm telling the truth.
And when you say minister, you mean Minister Louis Farrakhan?
I really think that he meant the minister in Chicago.
Hmm.
I
In your investigation with this, did you ever come face to face with Louis Farrakhan?
yes.
What was that like?
Standoff. Came face to face with Congressman Rangel.
Charlie Rangel.
Yes. Absolutely. And of course, I locked up I locked up the shooter.
Yep. And so much of it detailed in your book, Circle of Six. And want to just kind of wrap it up here and move
Sure.
to the end. I mentioned briefly and talked about some of the details of the Arthur nightclub shooting when one of the patrolmen was shot and killed, and you eventually are involved chasing down one of the suspects with the officer as he's dying. You were recognized for that at the time, but it was 50 years later or so that you were recognized recently with the NYPD Combat Cross. What did that mean to you to be able to receive that after all those years?
Of course, it's called a trio within the police department, and the Honor Legion and the Isaac Bell and the Combat Cross. So it was like you couldn't get any. You're not going to get any of the higher medals. But what it really did that day was to brought back the night of him literally dying in my arms, and all the 6-week trial of which his mother was in court every day. And while I was testifying, I would look directly at her, and it brought back those memories. So much so that when I did receive it from the police commissioner, I brought up the police officer,
The mother,
John Vareca, and. And the memories, and the memories.
So much that we've talked about, and so much more that we could talk about. The Hollywood accolades. I mean, being involved in so many different of the movies there, and it's such a story of from Harlem to homicide to Hollywood.
And then they're presently, for the past 2 years, they have been doing a doc.
About you.
The doc about me. It's 3 hours long, and
could be 6 hours.
It covers, it covers everything. It fleshes out everything that we have talked to.
Yeah.
But there's an awful lot in the doc about Hollywood.
Can't wait to see it.
All the pictures and stuff like that.
One last question I wanted to ask you. I wrote it down because I wanted to make sure I get it right here. But if a young officer came to you for advice, especially about integrity when the job gets political or the job gets hard, what do you tell that officer, he or she?
When the tour is over, go home. Go home. And what you're seeing here, what you're doing, leave it. Just go home.
Detective Randy Jurgensen, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Good luck to you. Can't wait to see the movie, can't wait to see the documentary, and for sure the book, Circle of Six, well worth a read.
Thank you for having me and letting me get out to this day that's important to me. Those that did the job that are no longer with us, yes.